What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing, back at you again. Today's topic, Errol Spence willing to fight Canelo Alvarez in desperate attempt to avoid Terrence Crawford. Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life before riches, huh? That life before riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glazzy run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.
Okay, boxing fans, let's talk some boxing today. All right, so the latest news in the Terrence Crawford Errol Spence saga is we're hearing that Errol Spence is floating the idea that he would like to fight Canelo Alvarez at 160 pounds. Now, I'm sure many of you are aware that Canelo Alvarez will probably never get back down to 160. The last fight he had was 175, I believe, and so it's difficult to say whether or not Canelo will ever come back down to 160. Okay, I mean, it's possible, but I wouldn't think so. I mean, he hasn't fought at 160 for quite a while, and if he was to fight at 160, I'm sure there are bigger welterweight. I mean, bigger guys like actual 160 pounders that he can actually fight, as opposed to fighting as opposed to fighting Errol Spence. But as we can see, Errol Spence is talking about having a mega fight at 160 with a guy that's at 175 pounds. So I'm not sure what that's all about. I mean, how are you calling out Canelo? Canelo is at 175, and you calling out Canelo at 160? I mean, Canelo is not coming down to 160 to fight the Jamal Charlo or Demetrius Andrade, who's at 160 also. As a matter of fact, I've heard that Jamal is willing to move up to 168 to fight Canelo, and so is I think Andrade would probably do the same thing if he had to. I mean, we all know that Canelo is a cash cow, so but those guys, those two middleweights who are already at 160, that's Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo, and Billy Joe Saunders. I think Billy Joe Saunders is 168 now, but they are willing to fight at 168 because they don't think that Canelo is going to come back down to 160. But here we have Errol Spence calling out Canelo to fight him at 160. So we can see that that's not really a serious he's not actually calling him out, but he's mentioning that would be a mega fight. Yeah, that might be a mega fight if Canelo was at 160, but he's not. So really, that's just like you might as well call out Deontay Wilder at 160. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so you have to ask the question, why is he doing that? Well, me personally, I believe that we see all the accolades, we see all what's going on in boxing today. We see some young boxers coming up like Teofimo Lopez. We got the Devin Haney's, the Shakur Stevensons. There's a lot of young up and coming fighters, who are actually willing to fight each other. And so we see, Errol Spence maybe is feeling a little bit, I don't know what, but it seems like, he just wants to see his name out there, with so-called mega fights. I mean, basically, I think he's doing everything, to avoid fighting Terrence Crawford. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to, because the real mega fight, is not a fantasy fight at 160 with a guy that's not even at 160. The real fight, the real mega fight, is at 147 pounds with a guy who's actually at 140 pounds where you are. So why are you talking about a mega fight, a mega fantasy fight at 160, where Canelo is at 168 or 175, and you're talking about fighting at 160 when you have Terrence Crawford right next to you at 147, and that's a real mega fight? Why aren't you talking about that fight? So I mean, this is ridiculous as far as I can see. I mean, I just think that Errol Spence is just trying to do any and everything in his power to duck Terrence Crawford, and we see it playing out, you know, as we speak. And so you don't hear him talking about Terrence Crawford at all. He doesn't mention Terrence Crawford's name. You know, he doesn't talk about mega fight with Terrence Crawford. You don't hear his trainer talking about Terrence Crawford, other than that, you know, he doesn't want Spence to fight Crawford. Okay, so basically, you know, it's a lot of ducking going on at 147 pounds. I mean, I never really thought that Errol Spence would become as big a ducker as I see, you know, him being at this point. You know, I mean, again, you know, Keith Thurman was the king of the duckers at 147 pounds, and since Keith Thurman is out of you know, out of commission basically right now, it looks like Errol Spence is taking that duck space, and he, you know, is doing as much ducking of Terrence Crawford as he possibly can. I mean, at this point, I'm thinking that it's getting ridiculous now. Okay, I mean, how can you not mention a guy that came up from 140 pounds to fight you? He specifically came up to fight you and called you out. Okay, and you know, instead of you fighting him, you know, you're making all kind of excuses. Your trainer is Derek James is making all kind of excuses why the fight can't happen. Terrence Crawford got to fight somebody first. He got to do this. He have to do that. He have to jump hoops. You know, stand on top of his head. You know, he got to fight this guy, fight that guy just to fight you, okay? When he actually came up from 140 pounds, got himself a WBO championship just to fight Errol Spence. And that was 2 years ago, and Errol Spence is still ducking him. I mean, let's look at a contrast, okay? Let's look at the contrast between what Errol Spence is doing and what Vasily Lomachenko did. When Teofimo first called out Lomachenko, he didn't have a belt at the time, and Lomachenko told him, hey, go get a belt and then, you know, come back and we could see what we can do. You know, get a belt and come back and then talk to me. So what did Teofimo do? He went, you know, he worked his way. He fought for the title, IBF title against Comey, knocked Comey out, and then, you know, went back to Lomachenko and said, you know, I got the title now. And what did Lomachenko do? He said, okay, well, let's make the fight. Okay, so the same thing happened with Crawford and Errol Spence, but instead of Errol Spence saying, let's make the fight, you know, he did everything in his power to duck that fight. And so let's listen to this clip. I mean, we're going to show what happened, you know, when Terrence Crawford pulled up on Spence, and, you know, what Spence had to say, and how he basically ducked Crawford right in front of his face. I mean, like I said, it's getting ridiculous. But let's check out the video. Check this out.
You sure I met Al Haines.
I met Al Haines.
I know.
Personally.
So have I.
What did he say?
Can we get both of them in the ring? Can we get both of them in the ring?
He said, I'm fighting Mikey. Then I might fight Sean Porter, Keith Thurman.
So he didn't mention Terrence, huh?
He didn't.
The smartest thing you can do is to stay away from Terrence. That's the smartest thing.
You're a legendary promoter. I like that. You're a legendary promoter. I like that. I like that. You're the best in the business. I like that.
He been around this long.
You're a legendary promoter. I like that.
So he know fight.
I like that.
Hey.
End of 2019.
Hey,
Did you not say that?
all that.
Did you not say that? That's what your promoter said.
This is what I'm saying.
I read it all.
This is what I'm saying. This is what I read it all too.
That's what your promoter
Terrence
said.
Crawford, wait till he get a belt.
Yeah.
He ain't did nothing in the welterweight today.
You
When he
haven't
get
did
a belt,
nothing.
you want
You
to
haven't
go
did
over there. Keith Thurman want to go over there, and now y'all want to say, oh, I ain't fought nobody, but I got a belt now, so why?
Okay. Sean Porter got a belt too.
So now
Sean Porter got a belt too. Sean Porter. So why am I go to easy road and you knock Sean Porter out? So why am I go to easy road and you knock Sean Porter out? So why am I go to easy road and you knock Sean Porter out? Why wouldn't I?
Look at this dude.
Why wouldn't I?
You a smart man.
So there you have it. So Errol Spence said, why wouldn't I go the easy route and fight Sean Porter or knock Sean Porter out? And so that's his answer to Terrence Crawford challenging him, you know, for the to be unified at 147 pounds. He'd rather fight Sean Porter, take the easier route. I mean, from his own mouth. So we see that, you know, just look at that clip right there. We can see that Errol Spence want no parts of Terrence Crawford. I mean, I think I think, I'm thinking that more than likely Errol Spence think, and I think Derek James also think that Terrence Crawford will stop Errol Spence. Okay, he won't just beat him. I'm thinking that Terrence Crawford will stop him. Okay, and I think Derek James feel the same way. They think that Terrence Crawford will stop Errol Spence, and so this is why he's going through all these changes, trying to duck here, duck there, and do everything in his power to avoid Terrence Crawford. Even you got his enablers and his proxies on YouTube, trying to belittle Terrence Crawford's record, trying to come up with all kind of reasons why Errol Spence shouldn't fight Terrence Crawford. I mean, it's ridiculous at this point. So, I mean, we saw what happened with as a matter of fact, before we even get to that, just to piggyback on what we just saw, okay, you saw what Errol Spence said, why don't I just, and you saw in the first part of the clip when he was talking about, the people he was going to fight next. He mentioned, Danny Garcia, this, that, and the other. He mentioned a whole bunch of people. He had fights lined up down the line. And when Crawford said to him, well, he didn't mention my name, huh? And he said, no, he didn't. They were talking about Al Heyman and the fight they had lined up. So, basically, they don't want nothing to do with Terrence Crawford, okay? They basically, I'm just going to come out and say it. A lot of people don't want to say it because, I don't know, for whatever reason, they don't want to offend Errol Spence, whatever. But, he's ducking Terrence Crawford, and we can see it plain as day. And we just saw it right there where he actually ducked Terrence Crawford right in front of his face. But just to, to back up what I'm saying and to piggyback on that, we're going to play another clip, okay? And we're going to check this clip out. Hold on, watch this.
Doesn't fight anyone. Should Earl give him a shot?
Who? What now?
He says if Crawford doesn't fight anyone, should Earl give him a shot?
Shot or what? I mean, he still got other guys he's gonna fight or whatever. I mean, his fight schedule may be planned out. You know what I'm saying? Like after this one, we got another big one. We want to get the 3 belts, whatever the case may be. But hey, listen, man, I think that fight will possibly happen. But I think that if you think about it like this, Errol can fight Keith Thurman, Sean Porter. He can fight Pacquiao. He can fight Danny Garcia. He can fight Ugas. He can fight all these guys. So his legacy has nothing to do with fighting Terrence Crawford.
Okay, so you heard what Derek James just said. Okay, he did basically the same thing that Errol Spence said. He had all these fights lined up down the line, and at this time he even mentioned Ugas. Okay, so basically they want to fight all these other guys except for Terrence Crawford. Now let me tell you something about that. The fight with Terrence Crawford will be the biggest fight in Errol Spence's career at this point. He hasn't fought anybody that would be a bigger fight than Terrence Crawford. Okay, but here you have Derek James talking about Ugas, Danny Garcia, blah blah blah. He gets, we got a lot of fights lined up down the line. So they got all kind of fights lined up down the line except for Terrence Crawford, and which doesn't really make much sense because Terrence Crawford is standing in the way of you becoming undisputed. Okay, at 147 pounds. I mean, why wouldn't you take that fight? It's a big money fight. Okay, that's the biggest fight at 147 pounds. Everybody wants to see that fight, but you hear Derek James say that Errol Spence's legacy doesn't depend on him fighting Terrence Crawford. I mean, what more do people have to hear for them to understand what's really going on here? Okay? It's a conspiracy to not fight Terrence Crawford. I mean, Errol Spence is literally ducking Terrence Crawford to the point where he even sends his manager out to go and do interviews to talk about how he doesn't have to fight Terrence Crawford. Okay? So it's not just Errol Spence saying he doesn't want to fight Crawford. His manager is coming out. I mean, I'm sorry, not his manager. His trainer, Derek James, is coming out, making the media circuit, talking about why Errol Spence shouldn't fight Terrence Crawford. I mean, it's ridiculous at this point. I mean, at this point, it's not just ridiculous. It's basically shameful. I mean, it looked like the fear is real. Okay, I mean, these guys really. I mean, not just. They really fear Terrence Crawford. I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, you know, I mean, it's crazy. So we see what's going on, okay? And like I said, it's coming from their own, you know, this is not secondhand news or third-hand news, okay? This is not rumors, this is not gossip, okay? This is the real deal. You're seeing it from their own mouth, from the first person, you know, Errol Spence and his trainer, Derek James. They're both making up all kind of different kind of excuses as to why they shouldn't fight Terrence Crawford, to the point where you see Derek James is talking about Errol Spence's legacy doesn't depend on him fighting Terrence Crawford. So, you know, this is what it is. And so, you know, we see, you know, when Teofimo just won the, you know, undisputed, not undisputed, but it's unified, because, you know, then Devin Haney's still out there. And, you know, as a matter of fact, Teofimo basically called out Devin Haney and said he'll fight him next. Now look at the difference between a young fighter like Teofimo and, you know, and a guy like Errol Spence, who has been around, you know, in you know, for a while now. Okay, look what Teofimo did. He just won undisputed against one of the best fighters in the world, so-called pound for pound, Vasily the Matrix Lomachenko, okay, and won the fight. And what did he do? Did he say, oh, you know, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna take it easy, I'm gonna, you know, fight a whole bunch of fights before? You know, he immediately accepted the challenge from Devin Haney at 135 pounds, who was the last guy with the belt. So if he fights Devin Haney, which is not gonna be an easy fight, okay, because I think maybe Devin Haney probably might beat him, but he's not worried about that. He's not afraid, okay? He's saying, okay, you out there, you say you want to fight me and you got the belt. Okay, let's make the fight. I mean, that's such a breath of fresh air, man. I mean, I love that, you know, but, you know, you got guys, experienced guys in the business like Errol Spence, and, you know, he's doing everything in his power to duck Terrence Crawford. And look at what Teofimo is doing. Young guy, 22 years old. He's setting an example for these guys who should be setting an example for him. Okay, but he said, as a matter of fact, and after the fight, he called out these guys at PBC and said, he called out Gervonta Davis. He said, man, you guys need to start making real fights and start fighting each other. All of us younger guys that's coming up, we need to fight each other. You know, we need to settle it. So I mean, I just love the way Teofimo is, you know, you know, I love what he's doing. I love how he's coming out and calling out these guys on PBC and telling them to fight themselves, to fight each other, okay? And, you know, which is what they're not doing, because as we see, you know, they're just keeping their fights in-house. You know, they're fighting each other in the house, but they're not fighting other fighters in boxing, but they're just fighting other PBC fighters. And so, you know, it's ridiculous at this point. And, you know, I'm just glad that Teofimo is not cut from that cloth that Errol Spence and the rest of these guys are cut from. It looked like he's cut from a different cloth, and he's like a real champion, and he takes his championship very seriously, and he wants to be undisputed, and he wants to fight the best, okay? As opposed to Errol Spence, who's, you know, doing everything in his power. You know, now he's talking about he want to fight Canelo at 160 when Canelo is at 175. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. So he just floating, you know, basically just floating Canelo's name out there, basically just clout chasing, you know, because you know that fight is not going to happen, you know, and you know, if anytime soon, if ever, okay? So logically, the fight that Errol Spence should be talking about and trying to make is the Crawford fight. But do you see him trying to make that fight? No, he's not trying to make it at all. He doesn't mention Terrence Crawford at all. He talks about everybody who got this, the other, everybody else, you know, but Terrence Crawford, okay? And so, I mean, you know, at this point, like I said, it's quite ridiculous now. It's to the point where it's a disgrace, really, what Errol Spence is doing. You know, in his multiple attempts at ducking Terrence Crawford. You know, any chance he gets to duck, you know, Terrence Crawford, he's taking it. Okay, now he's talking about fighting Canelo when Canelo is at 160, when Canelo is at 175 or 168. So we see that the lengths that this guy is going through, you know, basically just to duck Terrence Crawford. So I'm thinking, man, the fear must be real. What else can we think? I mean, we saw the video. We saw Errol Spence said he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to fight Crawford. He want to take the easy route and fight Sean Porter. And that's exactly what he did. He fought Sean Porter. And then after Sean Porter, now he's fighting Danny Garcia. And after Danny Garcia, I'm sure he's probably going to try his best to fight somebody else besides Terrence Crawford. And so, mark my words. I guarantee you, after the Danny Garcia fight, he won't mention Terrence Crawford again. He won't even say anything about Terrence Crawford fight. He'll be trying to fight somebody else, you know, Ugas or whoever. I don't know who he's going to try to find now to make it look like he does, you know, like he's not ducking Terrence Crawford. But, you know, people that's out there know boxing know what's really going on. So, like I said, I think the reason he's ducking Crawford is because, you know, I don't think, you know, he's so much worried about losing against Crawford as he's worried about getting stopped by Terrence Crawford. I think that's the way the fear is coming in at, okay? I think that's where the real fear is, that Terrence Crawford might stop him. And so it is what it is. So, you know, we see it. And I think at this point, you know,
doesn't
What's up,
fight
brother? Appreciate
anyone.
that.
disputed that Errol Spence is ducking Crawford. And the fact that he's calling out a guy like Canelo at 160 and Canelo is actually at 175 or 168, you know, I think that tells the whole story right there. Okay, I think that, you know, it looks like, you know, we're not going to see that fight anytime soon. If ever, I don't, you know, based on what we hear Derek James and Errol Spence is saying, they want to have nothing to do with, you know, Terrence Crawford. So at the end of the day, you know, we'll see what happens, but, you know, it is what it is. I'm just glad that we got young, you know, a new generation of fighters coming up now. You know, the Teofimo Lopez's, the Shakur Stevens, you know, Devin Haney, you know, guys that really want to fight each other and want to fight the best, fighting the best, you know, like Devin Haney and like, you know, Teofimo. I mean, I gotta give him kudos to those young guys, especially, you know, Haney and Teofimo. These guys are young and they want to fight each other and they want to, the best want to fight the best. No ducking going on, no cherry picking, you know, none of that nonsense. And, you know, I just want to say congratulations to these young guys. I'm going to be looking, you know, to see what they're going to do, you know, in their up and coming fights and how they're going to, you know, progress with their careers. Okay. And, you know, because it looks like the fighters like Errol Spence and the rest of these PBC guys, they're not really about, you know, fighting the best. They're basically about, you know, whatever they're about. I have no idea what they're about because, like I said, they're not trying to make the fights that the fans want to see. And we all see that now. And, you know, it is what it is. So I think you know, that's about it. I think I'm going to leave it there. This is TBE Boxing. I'm out.